Hi guys, so I wanted to go over affirmative action and why I believe affirmative action is racist. That is what I did my policy presentation and paper on for this course. So to start, I wanted to go over my three bullet points of my affirmative position on this topic. So I wanted to convey to the audience the harm that affirmative action has caused. So affirmative action is racist and discriminatory in its own process of policy. So then I want to discuss the inherency built into affirmative action. So, the policy, the attitude, and the context of the time of when the policy was created. And then I also want to inform you on my plan of solvency, of how I believe affirmative action can be changed or combated to better equip every race in this fight of equality. So I wanted to go to the first part, which is going to be our harm. The harm, when discussing affirmative action, I wanted to make sure that everyone was asked and posed the same question. Should race be a determining factor in college admissions? Obviously, most of us would say no. So in that, I, want to then talk about what happens in the college admissions process for upper schools. So obviously you apply, they ask for your race. There are certain qualifications and criteria that need to be met. With affirmative action, when the policy was put into place, it was an attempt to enact changes through various meanings of requiring certain quotas on public spaces and places when hiring, providing financial support, forms, grants, different things. And if you didn't meet those quotas, you'd be denied contracts or government fundings if those things weren't met. In that, I'm going to just bring up an example. We have a student named Jesus and a student named Michael. Michael and Jesus are the same age, same gender, same qualifications, same everything. If that school then is presented with a lack of criteria or the quota that they need to meet for minority students, which affirmative action has stated to create a more diverse place, even though Michael and Jesus are both qualified, Michael would then lose out on attending this college, Chafee, for instance, because Jesus fits the race portion that the school needs in order to receive its funding. That's discriminating against Michael based on his race that he cannot control. Then who would be accepted? You would then have to look into farther detail instead of just basing it off of race and going over that. One of the biggest scandals that happened for Ivy League schools was Yale and Harvard. They both were in the limelight around 2018 that have now started coming to a close. Yale being the biggest one. They're being sued by the Department of Justice after a 2-year-long investigation. The Department of Justice declares that the Yale University has found that the Ivy League schools illegally discriminated against white and Asian American students in highly competitive processes of choosing undergrad classes and students. This goes into a very harmful effect on those groups of races in the schools that they can attend and what kind of education they'll get. That then starts becoming harmful for the students that are getting in. Are they actually qualified, or is this a race situation? And so more questions start to get posed, and the more questions that get posed, the more harmful it is. So I think taking that into mind and understanding that this then goes into a federal civil rights law and how that is affecting other communities in that. So I think affirmative action was put in place to help stop discrimination, but in that same policy, it has created discrimination. So to move on into the inherencies of where I think affirmative action kind of falls or lacks. So in that, I want to say that affirmative action, we need to discuss the causes and effects. So in discussing the causes and effects, we're gonna, eliminate the option for racial disparity from, more students of one race getting in and other students not being able to attend, and then those students not passing. So I really want to talk about making the college admissions process solely based on an intellectual diversity of where you come from, what you have to offer the school, not just based on race. So your application should be solely based on your GPA, what classes you took, your extracurriculars, and those more important criteria that make you intellectually diverse rather than looking at your name, gender, and age, as well as race. So I think a policy that was helped to bridge racial divide then caused more racial divide to other groups. So inherently by design, this has now caused a bigger race issue, not only in communities, but then we'll start to look in this next part of how I plan to fix it, is then you start to look at the graduation rates of students of the minorities that are getting in. So, I believe my solvency would be to abolish affirmative action in schools. I think that affirmative action is then being racist towards certain groups. So, graduation rates specifically between blacks and whites is at a very high despair, especially even when you look at Asians against whites. You know, the amount of attendees of black have now dropped within the last couple years from 2011 to 2017 from the Institution of Educational Statistics. And then on top of that, only 40% of students of those 14 that get in actually graduate. So that is a despairing amount of the students who do get in then aren't graduating. And when we talk about students getting in solely based on race, that's not helping anybody, especially not the schools or the people involved. So I think encouraging intellectual diversity and merit-based acceptances is a part of a better plan that will help set more people up for future success. And I think changing the primary education system to better help students for the secondary education system, I think is a big way in abolishing affirmative action, but also keeping that diversity in students. I think one of the most interesting research that I found was off of Pew. It's a research center that mentioned that whites and blacks who at least had a bachelor's degree valued the diversity in community and diversity in learning more than people who didn't have post-secondary education. I thought that was alarmingly interesting, but also very eye-opening. So to move on from that, to do kind of my final remarks, kind of as you can see through, the basis of what I've started, affirmative action was not created in the intention to be harmful to any specific group or discriminate against any person based on the color of their skin. However, when creating the policy that undergoes the wrongs of the past, you're then creating a policy that does discriminate in trying to remove discrimination. I hope that with kind of the small amount of evidence I was able to get and the amount I was able to show you in the 8 minutes I've been talking will help to show, that affirmative action can be gone around a different way without having to base on race. Thank you.